The Canadian government, along with provincial leaders, has made it clear that they are ready to retaliate if further tariff measures are introduced. Premier Ayer emphasized that while immediate drastic changes in international trade are unlikely, Canada is prepared to deploy additional measures should the US escalate its economic threats within a 30-day window. Ontario Premier Doug Ford, a notable critic of Trump's policies, despite previously expressing some political admiration, warned that the president's actions could jeopardize Ontario's automotive jobs by shifting them to US states like Michigan and North Carolina. His metaphor of Trump pulling out the knife underscores the perceived economic violence of the US strategy. The current impasse has not only highlighted political and economic tensions, but also sparked a new Canadian movement. Political figures across the country, including Newfoundland and Labrador Premier Andrew Furey and new Democratic Party leader Jagmeet Singh, have rallied citizens to support domestic products. This movement reflects growing nationalistic sentiment among Canadians who are increasingly skeptical of US economic policies that could harm their country's economy. In this video, we fact-check President Trump's claims about Canada and examine the ongoing tensions between the two countries, tracing the conflict from its origins to the present day. Are Trump's claims valid? President Donald Trump's assertion that the United States subsidizes Canada by hundreds of billions of dollars annually has been widely debunked by experts and fact-checkers. This claim appears to stem from a misinterpretation of trade deficits. In 2024, the US had a trade deficit with Canada, largely due to significant imports of Canadian oil. However, a trade deficit does not equate to a subsidy. It simply indicates that the US imports more goods from Canada than it exports to Canada. This is a result of market dynamics and consumer preferences, not governmental financial support. The economic relationship between the US and Canada is deeply integrated and mutually beneficial. In 2023, Canada exported 77% of its goods to the United States and imported almost half of its goods from the US, making the two countries each other's largest trading partners. This extensive trade supports millions of jobs and contributes significantly to the GDP of both nations. It's also important to note that the US benefits substantially from this relationship. Canada is the largest supplier of energy to the US, including crude oil, natural gas, and electricity. This energy trade is crucial for supporting American industries and consumers. The significant population disparity between the United States and Canada plays a crucial role in shaping the trade dynamics between the two nations. As of 2024, the US population was estimated at approximately 339 million, making it more than 8 times larger than Canada's population of around 40 million. This vast difference in population size contributes to the US having a larger consumer base, leading to higher demand for goods and services, including imports from Canada. Consequently, the US often imports more from Canada than it exports, resulting in a trade deficit. It's important to note that a trade deficit in this context does not imply that the US is subsidizing Canada. Rather, it reflects the natural outcome of differing market sizes and consumer demands. US banks in Canada. Former President Donald Trump's claim that American banks are not allowed to do business in Canada is inaccurate. In reality, numerous US banks have operated in Canada for decades under the country's regulatory framework. While Canada enforces strict banking regulations, these rules apply uniformly to both domestic and foreign institutions, ensuring financial system stability. US banks are permitted to operate in Canada through 2 primary avenues. First, they can establish Schedule II banks, which are subsidiaries of foreign banks that can accept deposits and conduct a full range of banking activities. Several major US-based banks operate in Canada under this category, including Citibank, Canada, JP Morgan Bank, Canada, and Amex Bank of Canada. Second, US banks can function as Schedule III banks, which are branches of foreign banks authorized to conduct specific banking operations, primarily in corporate and investment banking. Among these institutions are Bank of America National Association, Wells Fargo Bank National Association, and Citibank N.A. These banks play a crucial role in financing, wealth management, and investment banking across Canada. As of recent data, there are 16 US-based bank subsidiaries and branches operating in Canada, collectively holding approximately $113 billion in assets. For example, JP Morgan Chase, one of the largest American financial institutions, has had a presence in Canada for over a century and currently employs around 600 individuals across major cities such as Toronto, Vancouver, and Calgary, Montreal. While it is true that Canada's financial regulations impose certain requirements on foreign banks, they do not prevent US banks from doing business in the country. Instead, these regulations ensure that all financial institutions, whether Canadian or foreign, adhere to the same high standards of stability and consumer protection. Trump's statement therefore misrepresents the reality of US bank operations in Canada. Drug trafficking to the US. President Donald Trump has asserted that significant quantities of illicit drugs, particularly fentanyl, are smuggled from Canada into the United States. He has cited this concern as a justification for imposing tariffs on Canadian imports. While there is evidence of fentanyl production and trafficking within Canada, the majority of fentanyl entering the US is primarily sourced from Mexico. Mexican cartels often produce fentanyl using precursor chemicals from China and smuggle it into the US through established routes. Canadian law enforcement has identified instances of domestic fentanyl production, particularly in British Columbia, and acknowledges that some of these drugs may be trafficked internationally, including into the US. However, comprehensive data on the total amount of fentanyl smuggled into the US is limited. Available seizure data indicates that the majority of fentanyl interdictions occur along the US-Mexico border, suggesting that the northern border with Canada is a less significant route for fentanyl smuggling. Let's now review how these tensions developed recently in December 2024. During a meeting at Mar-a-Lago with Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, then President-elect Donald Trump suggested that if upcoming US tariffs would harm Canada's economy, the country might consider becoming the 51st US state. He referred to Trudeau as Governor Justin Trudeau of the great state of Canada and expressed interest in continuing discussions on tariffs and trade. In early 2025, tensions between Canada and the United States escalated following a series of statements and policy proposals from US President Donald Trump. Central to the controversy were President Trump's suggestions that Canada should consider becoming the 51st US state and his administration's imposition of significant tariffs on Canadian goods. In a press conference at Mar-a-Lago on January 7, 2025, President Trump was asked if there was anything Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau could offer to prevent the impending tariffs. He responded, "What I'd like to see is Canada become our 51st state." Further emphasizing this stance, President Trump took to his social media platform, Truth Social, stating, "We pay hundreds of billions of dollars to subsidize Canada. Why? There is no reason we don't need anything they have. We have unlimited energy, should make our own cars, and have more lumber than we can ever use. Without this mass subsidy, Canada ceases to exist as a viable country. Harsh, but true. Therefore, Canada should become our cherished 51st state. Much lower taxes and far better military protection for the people of Canada, and no tariffs. In addition to previous statements, President Donald Trump has made several remarks that have heightened tensions between the United States and Canada. In January 2025, Trump stated, "They don't essentially have a military. They have a very small military." He claimed, "We're spending hundreds of billions a year to protect Canada." Trump criticized Canada for allegedly banning US banks, stating, "What's that all about?" These remarks were accompanied by the administration's decision to impose a 25% tariff on Canadian goods, excluding energy exports, which faced a 10% tariff. The tariffs were justified by the US government as measures to address issues such as illegal immigration and drug trafficking. In response to President Donald Trump's imposition of tariffs on Canadian goods, Canada has implemented a series of strategic measures to counteract the economic impact and assert its stance on fair trade practices. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced that Canada would impose a 25% tariff on a range of US imports, totaling approximately 30 billion K, effective February 4th, 2025. This initial wave targets products such as live poultry, dairy produce, vegetables, coffee and tea, oilseeds, sugar, beverages, tobacco, plastics, rubber, wood, paper, apparel, articles of iron and steel, aircraft parts, and arms and ammunition. A second wave, planned for later implementation, is expected to include passenger vehicles, steel and aluminum products, and aerospace items. The Canadian government has initiated legal proceedings against the US, challenging the tariffs as unjustified and in violation of international trade agreements. Concurrently, a remission process has been established, allowing Canadian businesses to apply for tariff relief or refunds under specific conditions, such as the inability to source goods domestically or from non-US suppliers. This measure aims to mitigate the adverse effects on Canadian companies and maintain economic stability. Individual provinces have also enacted their own countermeasures. Ontario Premier Doug Ford announced a ban on contracts with US companies, including the cancellation of a $68 million agreement with Elon Musk's Starlink to provide high-speed internet to remote communities. Ford emphasized the need to protect Ontario's economic interests and signaled a strong stance against the US tariffs. High-level diplomatic discussions have led to temporary pauses in tariff implementation. Prime Minister Trudeau and President Trump agreed to a 30-day delay in the imposition of tariffs, providing a window for further negotiations. However, the agreement only delays the imposition of tariffs by 30 days, during which President Trump has stated his intent to explore whether a final economic deal with Canada can be reached. This calculated delay has left Canadian policymakers wary of what may come next. Throughout the negotiation process, President Trump has repeatedly expressed his dissatisfaction with the US trade deficit with Canada, and has controversially suggested that Canada should become the 51st state. Such comments have provoked a strong reaction from Canadian leaders, who view these remarks as an implicit threat to Canadian sovereignty. British Columbia Premier David Eby condemned Trump's strategy, accusing him of deliberately seeking to destroy Canada's economy with the ultimate aim of annexation. Eby's words, describing the president's plan as reprehensible inexplicable, and profoundly disappointing, have resonated with many Canadians who are united in rejecting any attempt to subjugate their nation under US control. Responding to Trump's proposal, Trudeau firmly stated there was not a snowball's chance in hell of Canada joining the United States. He emphasized the strength of the bilateral relationship, while rejecting any notion of a merger. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre asserted Canada will never be the 51st state, period. We are a great and independent country, he said. Green Party leader Elizabeth May criticized Trump's comments, stating they were never funny. She highlighted the distinct differences between Canada and the US, noting Canada's constitutional monarchy and different political system. May humorously suggested that US states like California, Oregon, and Washington could join Canada instead. Recent discussions about the potential annexation of Canada by the United States have been met with significant opposition from both Canadian citizens and political leaders. A UGV poll conducted 4 days ago revealed that 77% of Canadians are against the idea of becoming part of the US, with only 15% in support. In contrast, American respondents were more divided, with 42% opposing and 36% supporting the notion. Public sentiment has also manifested in various forms of protest. For instance, during a National Hockey League game in Ottawa on February 1, 2025, Canadian fans booed the US national anthem in response to President Trump's annexation comments and tariff threats. Additionally, an Ottawa-based design firm created hats bearing the phrase, "Canada is not for sale," mimicking the style of the Make America Great Again hats. These hats have gained popularity as a symbol of Canadian sovereignty and resistance to annexation proposals. While the temporary pause on tariffs offers a brief respite in the economic standoff between the US and Canada, the underlying tensions remain far from resolved. The recent comments and actions of the US president have only added fuel to the fire, leaving many Canadians feeling frustrated, disrespected, and increasingly wary of their closest trading partner. The anger, though momentarily subdued, is not gone. It is simmering beneath the surface, on the verge of boiling over. Trust in the US administration is eroding rapidly in Canada, pushing its government and businesses to diversify trade relationships. From strengthening ties with the European Union to expanding markets in South America, Canada is actively seeking alternatives to its historically dominant economic reliance on the US. This shift is not just symbolic. It marks a strategic realignment that could have lasting repercussions for both nations. For the United States, the consequences may not be immediate, but they will be felt in the years to come. The American economy remains deeply dependent on Canadian imports, ranging from essential food supplies to energy and electricity.